Why is it so hard to get rid of things? That's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. First off, I want to talk about the emotional side of decluttering and why that makes it difficult to let things go. And then I'm going to talk about the other side of decluttering, the lack of time, the lack of motivation, the wanting to be frugal and keep things that are useful, just in case we need them. I was having coffee with a friend a couple of months ago, and she's in a completely different place in her life right now. She's a mom of 13, but over half her kids are out of the house now and on their own. So with only having 6 kids at home, she needed to declutter some things and simplify their space. She no longer needed a lot of baby things and all the toys for the younger kids, and quite so many of all the toys and the clothes and all of those things that we end up saving, especially when we have a lot of kids. As we visited, she talked about the emotions that were coming up as she sorted and decided what to keep and what to let go of. She said the actual decluttering part wasn't hard for her. She wasn't tempted to keep the things. She found herself crying through the process and having to acknowledge what it meant to be moving out of a certain season of life into another season of life. When we declutter, we come face to face with our feelings. And as we go through the process of deciding to let things go, any number of emotions can come up. It may be a subtle shame from having spent money on things and not actually using them. Or maybe it's because someone gave us an item and we don't treasure it like we think we should. Instead, it's sitting up in the attic collecting dust and cobwebs. The emotions can also be as heavy as mourning the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the hopes and dreams of things that you longed for but know will never come to fruition. Because of all these heavy emotions, many of us are tempted to keep the things so we don't have to deal with those emotions. It's much easier to leave the cupboards full and the closets full than actually walking through these emotions, acknowledging them and feeling those feelings. So how do we do it? How do we move past these challenging emotions? I'm going to share 4 ways that we can do this. First, sometimes we can just power through. We can decide, I'm going to get rid of as much as possible. I'm going to do this in a 2-hour time frame, and we can just square our shoulders and get to it. When feelings come up, we can discard them and just say, doesn't matter, and just move forward. Maybe not the healthiest way to do it, but it's possible. Number 2, we can be our own counselor. We can talk ourselves through it. Yes, I spent money on this, but it's okay. It has served its purpose in my life and is no longer adding value. So I can get rid of it and I can pass it on so it can serve someone else. Number 3, we can acknowledge the feelings, understand that we are going to feel it, sit there for a minute or 2 and just let it wave over us and then subside. Because believe it or not, those feelings don't stay around. If you come to an item that you want to get rid of, but you have all these different emotions that come up, you might be concerned that, if I give it away, I'm going to keep feeling this tumult and then I'm going to get rid of it and I won't have it anymore, but I'll have all these feelings. And that's not the case. The feelings come, we can feel them, we can acknowledge them, we can cry, we can do whatever it is to process those feelings and they go away. And then we move past it. And after a few minutes, all that anxiety and that buildup and that stress, it settles down and we take the box out to the car and then we drop it off at the donation center and we find that we're okay. We felt the feelings, but now we're not feeling those feelings anymore. And we're okay. Number 4 goes right along with that, allowing ourselves to process them. It's allowing ourselves to feel those feelings. Instead of trying to hide them away like the stuff in our closet, we're actually allowing ourselves to feel them and experience them. It's normal. It's healthy. It's part of being human. We can acknowledge the hopes and dreams of things that did not and will not come about. And we can determine to live our lives and be okay regardless. Acknowledging that, yes, this person has passed on and I miss them. This season of life is over and it is sad. Letting go of the clutter in our home that brings up so many emotions is also letting go of really heavy, hard emotions. Because we have to process those emotions when we make the decisions, unless you're like number one and just like power through it anyway. When we allow ourselves to process those emotions and feel those feelings, we can move on to a healthier place, mentally and emotionally. This is why people who embrace minimalism feel so free. Because whether we like to admit it or not, so much of the things in our home has emotions tied to it. Yes, it's hard to face those emotions. It's hard to feel your feelings, but it also means you're able to come to terms with that situation and move on. And when you get those items out of your home, then you can turn around and you can look at your home and you can feel like this weight has been lifted off your shoulders. So that's the emotional side of it. But what if the problem of getting rid of stuff is actually the time or the motivation, or because we don't want to live frivolously or be bad stewards of what was given to us? First off, let's talk about time. There's usually so many other things that we would rather do. Like, sure, maybe we enjoy like learning about decluttering and hearing different hacks, but the actual work part of it, we just don't want to do it. I want the benefits of a minimalist life or a simplified home, but I don't actually want to take the time to get there because that's going to take a lot of time. So what is a person supposed to do? Well, if it's a priority to us, we have to set aside time to do it. If we want to eat healthy, we have to set aside time to be able to cook at home. If we want to get fit, we have to set aside time to work out. If we want a simplified home, we have to set aside time to get it there. Things only get done when we make them a priority. Does it take sacrifice? Yes, it does. It does take sacrifice. It does take setting aside time in the beginning. But in the long run, you gain so much time freedom because you get rid of all of these things that are occupying so much of your time right now. If you think about cluttered counters, if you have all kinds of piles and things on top of your counters, then it takes a lot of time and energy to clean the counters. But if there's nothing on the counters, then it takes you seconds to wipe the counters off and be done with the cleaning. And that applies to every single area of our house. The laundry, the storage, the cleaning, the cooking, all of it becomes so much more efficient when we don't have to work around stuff. All right, now what about the motivation? Sometimes we're just not motivated. Really, here's all these things that need to be done and I really just don't feel like doing any of it. And so we just sit and we wait for motivation to just visit us. But it doesn't really happen that way, does it? To get motivated, we have to take action. We have to start doing. Motivation follows action. When something is in motion, it moves much easier. When we start working on our house, it's getting the ball rolling. Sure, it took a lot of effort to start, but once we're going, it doesn't take as much effort to continue going. 5 to 10 minutes a day of working can be enough to do that. All right, what about the just in case items? Because all of us have those things that, well, we should keep this just in case we need it. So I want you to know that if you think you need to keep something just in case, it's really a decision based on fear and scarcity. The fear of, oh, I'll be without, I won't have it if I need it. Or the idea that I just don't want to be lacking in some way. As a Christian, I don't want any of my decisions to be based on fear. So if it comes to an item that I am tempted to keep, then I ask myself, why do I want to keep it? Is it because I'm afraid to be living without it? What's the actual likeliness that I will be using it anytime in the near future? Now, because we're a bigger family, and I say that relatively because my friend Teresa that I was just talking about has 13 kids, so it doesn't seem like a big family really. But because we have so many people in our home, there were things that as I was decluttering, I could keep that we could use up. We would eventually use all the bars of soap. We would eventually use all the shampoos. But if it's not something I was going to use up in 5 years, it really didn't feel like it offered me enough value to take up the space in my home. Because everything in our home, we have to manage it. And I don't really want to manage all those bar soaps for 5 years until they're all used up. So yes, possibly our family could use up all those bars of soap. Would we? No. I'd just be saving them, in case there was a worldwide soap shortage. We don't really use bar soap. So if it was something that I didn't like the smell of, I didn't like the way it worked, I knew if I ran out of what I was currently using that I would just run to the store and replace what I liked instead of using these stashed away items that I had. Then I gave myself permission to let them go and not beat myself up for the waste. Instead of focusing on all the bad, like the shame and the money spent and the whatever else I loaded onto myself, I had to focus on the goal of, I want freedom in my life. I want room in my cupboards. I want to be able to open up those spaces and find exactly what I need easily and not have that guilt every time I opened the bathroom cupboard. So there are things that we can use up. But what about things that don't get used up? Like, say, extra screwdrivers. Honestly, I probably had like 20 screwdrivers in the garage, maybe more. On a yearly basis, I might need 2 or 3 of those sizes. What about the other 17? If I kept all those screwdrivers, it really would be because, well, I'm afraid these are going to break, or I'm afraid I'm not going to have money to buy a screwdriver when I need a screwdriver. It would all be because I'm afraid of having to do without. But yet, if I only have 3 screwdrivers and I go to my toolbox in the garage, it's so much easier to find the screwdriver that I need. And what about that extra crock pot? I'll be honest, I had 2 crock pots and I hated cooking with a crock pot. But they were supposed to be mom's best friend. I felt like I should use a crock pot. I should own a crock pot. I should cook with a crock pot. But over the last 20 years, I have not liked any of the food that came out of the crock pot. I have not liked cleaning the crock pot. And it was taking up so much space in my kitchen. I had been hanging on to these 2 crock pots because I was afraid of missing out on this something good that other people talked about. Well, that something good was not good for me. I have a friend that uses a crock pot probably 6 times a week. And the time that I had my crock pot, I don't know if I actually used it 6 times. Since I really disliked it, why was I worried about living without it? So as I was decluttering, I had to acknowledge those areas in which I was afraid of having to live without, of doing without, of missing out, of not being prepared. And I had to let go of them regardless of my fear, because my eye was on the prize, a simple home, a home that was easy for me to maintain. It's over there, just on the other side of those difficult decisions. You can feel the fear and you can do it anyway, and you'll be okay. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.